So this idea of like the dedication and focusing in, because if you're splintered and you have your energy everywhere, what you're producing is watered down. This was a lot of polishing. There's a lot of. There's no way I could do my show without a prompter if I wasn't at the age of 9, like learning how to read a prompter.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So there's so many layers and levels to it. And I think that because there's another side though too, I think, to independent media, where it's like then everyone thinks they can do it, and they don't realize like, if you get the technology, I got the tools, I got the mics, I got the this, I got the that.
Yeah.
If you don't realize, like, it's not because you have access to the
That's
things
real.
that makes it real, right? There's really some magic behind that you got to be able to have internally in order for anything you're producing to matter to anyone.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Rubino.
And this DJ in the building.
And you listening to the UpNUp Podcast.
Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing?
I don't know, just listen.
Yes. Welcome.
What it do?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned into the UpNUp Podcast on the UpNUp Network. I'm your host, Rubino.
And I'm DJ man.
What's up, DJ How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling blessed.
Nice.
You know what I mean, man? Blessed. Grateful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every episode.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to everybody in the room. Obviously, shout out to the team. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the family. Welcome to the show. As I stated, this is the UpNUp Podcast. It's the podcast where we're focused on cultivating culture.
Mm-hmm.
We do that by providing amazing stories of individuals, groups, movements, people who are breaking down barriers, taking up space in various industries, right?
Yep.
And really just making a way, not only for all of us currently here, but for the next generation to come, right?
Yes, sir.
And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the family. And to the consistent viewers, supporters, listeners, you know, we call them family up here as well.
Family.
So shout out to the family, man. We appreciate you guys. Yeah, man, I'm feeling blessed. Like, you know, coming in here, being able to always learn, you know, being able to get inspired. I don't take it for granted, bro. You know, I feel like we're privileged in that way.
Yes, sir.
And being able to learn about people's journeys and taking that and carrying that in our own lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today's guest is someone who's truly a force in every sense of the word, someone who's pushing our culture forward with her platform as well as her efforts. She's definitely a true culture cultivator who's keeping everything she's doing on the up and up.
Yep.
Today we're joined by the talented and uplifting Emmy award-winning media queen, TV producer, host, community activist, community builder, and one of the Pacific Northwest leaders in the worlds of media and culture. Definitely one of the hardest working folks out here, right? But she makes it look effortless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which is hard work to do,
Yep.
you know? So if you see people working out there, you see people working hard out there, just know. Or if you see people making something look easy, just know it takes a lot of work. It's hard.
Yeah.
But we're honored, man, very honored to have her in the building with us today. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Our guest is none other than the one and only TraeAnna Holiday. Can we get a round of applause?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Wow, that's amazing. I'm doing well. It's so good to be here with y'all.
Yes.
Pleasure to
Honestly.
have you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much for allowing me to be here and joining the fam officially now.
Yeah, officially. Come on, man. We always say a lot of these episodes are long overdue, but right on time.
Yeah, right on.
Right
I'm
on
with
time.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we start every episode with the quote of the day, something to just get the vibe right. Brother man of the quotes.
All right, man. The quote of the day today is: the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Who's that quote by?
Alice Walker. Yeah.
What do you think about that quote?
It's a good one. And honestly, a lot of times self-reflection is what folks need to understand their power.
Mm-hmm.
And I deal with this on a daily. So I really appreciate that quote because it's very true.
Yeah.
And it's something I want to instill in my children too when I think about how I show up in the world, you know, right? Am I accessing the full-fledged nature of my power, right? So that's a great one.
Thank you.
Right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like the part where it says you don't even know you have power, right? And I think that's the power of empowering others.
Exactly.
Some people need to be empowered to know that they even have it to begin with. So, Yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm.
Okay, I see
Thank
you.
you, man.
He don't
Thank you.
miss on the
Thank you.
quotes.
Thank
You don't miss.
There
You
go.
don't miss on the intros.
Okay.
You know, so.
See, we're doing our jobs.
Yeah,
There
right?
we
We're
go.
holding- okay, there we go. Now, Trey, obviously, you know how we get down here. It's really about people's journeys and the roads they've traveled. But before we do so, I always love to start the episode by asking guests kind of about the seasons they're in. And for you, how would you describe kind of like your current season right now that we're in?
This is a great question. I mean, honestly, I'm so grateful to be able to be digging deeper. It's a deeper dive right now from the season I'm in. A lot of the work that I am doing is taking a lot of the things that we started as a foundation to another level. And so I think I'm in a season of, understanding that power piece. I mean, back to that quote, you start something oftentimes thinking, hey, I just want to do this thing. And then when you begin to understand the impact of that thing more, it allows your understanding to grow along with the things that you're putting out there in the world. So I'm in this season of understanding the impact of the work that I'm doing, like the impact it's having on the community. And I'm also in a season of real self-reflection. I've spent a lot of years focusing on giving and just my output.
Yeah.
And so I have to start thinking about what am I putting in so that I'm not giving from an empty cup. And it's something that really I started the year with. Shout out to all the folks for the Say Yes event, Marie. And, to be honest, I was impressed because they took me on a journey of what am I saying yes to this year in my life. And it really opened my eyes to like, wait a minute, what am I saying yes to? And so I'm also on this journey of self-reflection. And I would be remiss because it was Marie and someone else, and her name is escaping me right now, but she's phenomenal. Dreams Manifest, I think, LLC.
Okay.
She's phenomenal. So I'll just say that the work that they did in that workshop with 30 Black women in a room was powerful.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me. So I'm being intentional about what am I doing for me as well as I move through this journey in this
I love
season.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's important. It really is. Especially that piece of like output, We love to pour out, and I think sometimes we lose sight of what we're giving ourselves.
That's right.
It's tough. That's good.
right.
That's good though.
You're right, man. Yeah, that was powerful. Sorry, I was thinking about
had a
that.
moment?
But yeah, I definitely had a moment. So Trey, I just want to take it back, talk about your upbringing, growing up. What was it like for you, and anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because when you get older, you realize how important certain moments were in your life. And as a young person, I experienced, creativity from an eye of like, I want to do that. I can do that. And I saw Felicia V. Loud on stage in Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry when I was young. And I was so blown away by what she was doing. She was singing and acting, and she was so in it. And I was so enthralled by it because I had read the book. I was there at my school. We read the book and then saw the play. And I was like, I want to do that. And from there, I really hunkered in on training and media and TV, film, commercials, modeling, all of these things. And I took all of that to Garfield, did a bunch of theater. I had done movies and, Bill Nye the Science Guy when I was a kid and just, little shows. And I went on auditions all the time. And, and so that was part of my life, right? Because I was like, I want to do this. I'm going to get the training. My parents poured into me because they were like, she's serious about it. And I came to them with this whole, okay, I've, saved up my babysitting money. And they're like, okay, we'll match it so you can do this class.
Yeah.
And it just kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities of creativity from, someone who's kind of in front of the camera and on the stage playing roles in theater at Garfield. And then I learned kind of the behind the scenes, took all of that to Howard. And so my upbringing allowed for me to create this path of creativity
Yep.
that I get to really tap into now.
Yep.
So I came back from Howard, started my family, and eventually I graduated from UW Tacoma with a degree in communications and urban studies. And it essentially it offered me the opportunity to understand the depths of my creativity,
Yeah.
which, in the high school years, it was just about, creating works, landing roles, being on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And later, when I realized, like, I want to shape the story, I need to be behind the camera, I need to be a producer, I need to be a director, I need to actually put my ideas in a different way. So back, then you couldn't tell me that I would one day have my own show.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it comes from a long line and many years of study of hunkering down. It wasn't just like, oh, I want to be in front of the camera. It was like all of these years.
That's so important because, and I'm glad that was a great question in terms of just opening up the backstory, right? Because I think a lot of things we do when we're younger, there's seeds that are being planted. We just don't know it. And but one thing that's interesting, I did read an article that you did, or an interview that you did with South Seattle Emerald, where you spoke about the influence your mom had on you in terms of just community work and like pouring out. You spoke about how she was very active in the community as far as being resourceful, giving back, and just showing up for people. Like, can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great point, and shout out to you for doing your homework.
Yeah, I got to.
Yeah, definitely. My mother was a family support worker for Seattle Public Schools, and that comes with like a task list, right? Like you do these things for families, and you do them for the families that are in your school or whatever. But my mom was like, if I have the resources, I'm going to help any family. And she did. And she also went above and beyond, because it was like when she was connecting with the family she was working with, she would find what they needed, not what was just on her resource list already, right?
Yeah.
And so she would do extra, and I would be in her office all the time. She was at Madrona K-8 for years, and that used to be kind of a little spot. We used to just hang out in my mom's office, and I think, almost all my siblings, we all kind of experienced that time of my mom being there. And just seeing how she would be like, oh, what? You need this? Oh, wait, she just had it. And, I recognized at that time she was going above and beyond.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, being in community in the Central District,
Yeah.
of Seattle, I mean, people be like, oh, you Tracy's daughter. Oh, she helped us.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
that was like, I grew up with that. And
Yeah.
I look alike like my mom.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there was no escaping
Yeah.
that. So people be like, you look just like her. Oh my God, you must be Tracy's baby. So that was something that I grew up with. And to this day, I mean, me and my mother are very close. And I'm grateful for that relationship, 100%.
Yeah, that's just amazing. I just think a lot of times we don't really know what the things we're doing as we're young and growing up are gonna, like, the impact they're gonna have on us when we get older. But back to like earlier when you talked about reflection, and I think a lot of folks, if you just do some real deep reflection, you can connect a lot of dots about why you're so successful in your present day and at the things you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's really the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Of being able to do the reflection. There's a lot of people who are only looking forward. So are you learning the lessons, you know?
Yep.
And I remember someone told me once, when you look back at, previous relationships, think about your relationship liabilities and your relationship assets. Are you bringing your liabilities into future relationships, or are you learning from them and enhancing your assets? And it just, it struck me, to be like, oh, that's in any relationship. Doesn't matter if it's romantic or whatever. The idea of learning from, what did I do there that was I brought that liability to that situation, right? And that could be a business relationship or partnership or whatever. What am I learning from that so that I don't repeat it moving forward? I mean, we talk about Sankofa, looking back to look forward. And I think about that principle in my own life. How am I being intentional about how I look back to make sure that my forward is better than what I had when
Yeah.
I look back.
That's
So that's
real.
important.
That's
You're
Yeah,
right.
definitely. It feels like a filter. It's like you're filtering stuff out. You're like, okay, I'm gonna take the lesson from it and kind of leave the, the other
Mhm.
stuff that doesn't need to be carried on with me. But yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, like moving along, you touched on Howard University and obviously kind of the college years. I feel like college years are so important for everybody who has opportunity to experience it. Can you just take us through, I guess, what that experience looked like for you and how it may have shaped you after?
It's very interesting because I was so excited I was like, Howard's the only college I'm applying to. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
going there.
Yeah.
And me and my best friend were like in it. We're like, we don't care. We're getting there. And we had went the year before, when we were seniors, we went to their homecoming, so we're like,
Yeah.
like this is it, right? And I was in the theater program, and I because of my travel, I missed the auditions, right? Because I was serious. I was like all about characterization. I was a serious thespian. And I got there too late to do the audition. So they ended up enrolling me in like acting 101. And I was so appalled. I just
Yeah.
remember being like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong class.
Yeah.
I'm with the wrong students
Yeah.
because they don't understand it. And I experienced people there at the time who were like, well, I'm cute enough. I have a really cool name.
Yeah.
That's going to get me very far.
Mhm.
And I was so critical. Even I work on my criticism now, but back then I was like super critical, especially about theater and Black theater. And I was like, I'm with all of these folks who are just they're not good.
Yeah.
They're not great at all. I don't even know how they're at Howard. They're not good.
Yeah.
And the several of the professors really recognized, okay, like you kind of,
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't be in this class,
Mhm.
but the other one is full. So what we'll do is, we'll work with you. And they did. And the second semester, they actually gave me a scholarship to stay. So I'm really grateful for that because they recognized,
Yeah.
right? But I was doing theater management because I was like, not only do I want to do stage stuff, I want to do the work behind. Again, I
Yeah.
want to produce shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was so anchoring for me. It was like such a learning lesson about, for me, I was like, wait, if I only focus on the front stage and being in front of the camera and all of that, I'm going to audition for my life and I'm going to have to play roles that other people create for me
Yep.
or create for someone to play. And
Mhm.
I just so happen to be the person. And over time, it did not bode well with me. I was like, I don't know that that's really what I want to do. But
Yeah.
it was being there and in it that really guided me
Yeah.
to say when I ended up eventually really like changing my major, it was like I need to focus on overall communications because I want to create, I want to produce, I
Yeah.
want to direct. And I was going to a school that didn't have like, oh, we have film school
Yeah.
here. So I
Mhm.
was doing the closest thing I could.
Yeah.
But those college days really helped to shape my pathway. And lastly, I'll say, early on, it felt like I went to college in different phases of my life too, because I went right after high school, straight to Howard. I was there for a year. I came back, went to Seattle Central, and I was trying to figure out like, what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
I took some time off, started a family. Eventually I went back to UW Tacoma, and I was like, it was a smaller campus then. Oh my gosh, it's changed so much now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then felt like the early years of it. And it was a great place for people like me who
Yeah.
were like a little older, right? And I was coming back into it, but I was
Yeah.
determined to get my BA,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But I did a couple study abroads at that time.
Mhm.
I went to Europe and I traveled throughout Europe studying European culture and identity. And it was mind blowing because I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like essentially the classes were like, we don't really have a culture. Our culture is war. And I was like, oh man. And our societies are built on war. Our communities, that's kind of a foundation. And I was blown away. And then I went to Kenya and a couple different parts. I was Tanzania a little bit. So like I got to be in Kenya for some time and then study like, environmental science of all things, but it was like the culture again.
Yep.
You're experiencing these different nodes of culture that exist globally.
Yeah.
And it just really changed my perspective on
Opens
what
the
I
mind
wanted to
up.
bring back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, glad you brought that up. So, what were, I guess, some of the things that you did bring back, and like that transition from going from those places to coming back here is kind of like, was it like a refresher? It's like, all right, I need to apply all these things, or
Yeah.
know?
I mean, to be honest, it's what positioned me to get a degree in urban studies as well as communication, because, when I was in Europe, I was like, wow, I got to experience what it means to be a welfare state. And that basically just means everyone is paying like 40% of their income in taxes because they don't have homeless people.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, there's not people on the streets. Like, what is this? I was in a town and there was like one woman and she was mentally unstable. You could kind of tell, but it wasn't because, that's what she was dealing with. It wasn't like she slept on the streets. She was out there in the streets and kind of asking for money, but it was one person, in this town. And I was asking the locals, I'm like, do y'all not have like, a homeless population? And they were like, no, like really, even our doctors, our lawyers, they all stay in similar homes like us. We are not out here for the kind of capitalistic mindset. And it changed my life, right?
Yeah.
And then going to Kenya and seeing such rich environment, because I was there for environmental studies. So we were, rescuing birds and turtles and cleaning up the ocean. And I did a whole project on, water that changed my life too, because there they would purposely shut off the public water so that they could privatize the water coming in, and they had cutback or paybacks that they would get because they'd shut off the water. Then this private company come in, supply the water, but people had to pay for that, and so the people who were shutting it off were also getting a payback from just like it wasn't just like, oh, it's corruption. It wasn't really that. It was like the people there, how they experienced this ebb and flow, literally, of water in their communities. And to see young 4-year-olds know that their chore is to go to the river and get the water and bring it back to the village. I'm like, oh my gosh, my kids need to be raised here. 'Cause our kids here it's so posh for them.
Yeah.
So all of these things, I was bringing back with me. And I did experience some of those negative impacts, both in Europe and in Kenya, in terms of just like how racism settles there.
Yeah, for sure.
That when you come home, you're like, okay, what? So this spirit of activism, of community building, I think started brewing there, to be honest, and to bring it back here because so what am I doing for my people here?
I feel that. I love how it all connects, and what I'm realizing as well is you seem like you've always had like a big picture mindset, right? Even when you're talking about your college years and how, I want to be in front of the camera, I want to be on stage, but I also want to do what's going on behind the camera. I'm curious about that as well. And I also understand how that's going to be important down the line, because I see it a lot. You see a lot of actors, successful actors, one in particular, Michael B. Jordan, like the most recent film he directed. It was like his directorial debut, and he did an interview where he just talked about how like he was so excited to be able to finally do that. And I can only imagine what it's like for actors who aren't thinking big picture maybe out the gate, and they're like, yo, I just want to act. Eventually they're going to get to a point where like, yo, I want to do something for me, right? So I love how you talk about that, because I think that's a message for people out there to understand, do the thing, but also understand what makes the thing work, right? And how you can potentially learn and be a part of that process as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the big picture piece for me. I think when you have, they say visionaries need a team, right? And I had to learn just like in the last, 5-10 years, what that really means, like for me, because for a long time, I was not doing the right thing. Like I wasn't in the right industry, and I felt it, you know what I mean? And I dealt with that in a different way. my family, we have histories of depression. I found myself in that boat where I was like, just I'm not in the right. Like something's not right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, why is it not right? Because I was always knew I was a creative, but I was just in the wrong field.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point of like the big picture, it was because as a visionary, you need a team. And so that became really clear to me early on, because when you're a visionary and you're a team member, but you're a visionary, you're coming across a lot of glass ceilings because, of course, I'm a Black woman. I was in the advertising industry, and there weren't opportunities for me to showcase that I'm a visionary there, right? So I was in a very small box of like what I could produce.
Restricted a little bit,
a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
And the ideas of like, but if I want to get to a C-suite, like what does that even look like for me? Is it possible? Because they don't have a pathway that's directed for someone that looks like me.
That's real.
And so a lot of it was every opportunity I get, I'm going to showcase my creative ability. I've got to showcase my visionary mindset. But it was small. And so it made me feel smaller. And so I think over time, you're right, in terms of how much that flourished later is really clear to me now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on like leading into Converge. Like, how did that all come about?
Oh, well, it's amazing because, you know, the one of the greatest things that came out of my time, besides some really great friendships when I was in the advertising industry, was we had a video team and they were doing a bunch of, the work wasn't passionate work. They're like, you know, we got to do these kind of corporate style videos. And I started talking to the director of that team, and I was like, man, I got some dope ideas. And he's like, really? You know, like share them, you know?
Yeah.
And so we picked it. He's like, let's do this idea. And it was to do a documentary on gentrification in the Central District. And so I'm like, okay, you know, we're about to do our first day of interviews. I get a bunch of folks to come to Powell Barnett Park, and I'm like, we're about to do this. And Joaquin came, and I interviewed him. And, he, you know, these interviews were shorter, but over that project, I mean, we're still going with that project. We haven't even released it yet.
Oh, wow.
And that project started in 2017.
Okay.
And it led me to get more into community. Because, again, you know, when I built my family, my parents were gentrified in 2003. You know, we lived they bought a house in Federal Way. And so, like, I wasn't in the CD all the time, right? And so when Africatown was brewing and the Peace Center and, like, all this history, there was things I missed because I was traveling. I was in school elsewhere, all of these things. Then I started building my own family, and I was just kind of insulated. And so that project opened up the opportunity for me to be more in community. And I started working eventually at Africatown. There was an opportunity, and they are like, well, we have some funding to bring you in, you know, and I was doing admin work, but it was like the greatest stuff because it was just, you know, the land trust was really just getting going then. And so it was just a small team of us with, you know, a lot of amazing volunteers who had been part of the efforts for a really long time. And that really is where, you know, Omari and I connected because he was doing, you know, media work. And then I was like, that's my background. And he was like, what? You know, I traveled throughout Africa and I did all the, you know, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh. So we connected on that and was able to start doing, he's like, man, I'm gonna pull you into some of these projects then. Let's do some, you know, we were doing like radio commercials and we were out in community and we were, you know, capturing stories of things that were going on in community. And at that time, it was under the name Africatown Media Network.
Yep.
And so we were doing, you know, I had my first show, you know, Community Corner, where I was bringing folks into community and just talking to them, and you know, some politicians and all that. I mean, like it was good times, and that morphed into, you know, obviously when 2020 hit, you know, he was like, man, look, we need to do a show and we need to start like educating the people on what resources are out there because it was a plethora of things going on. People were confused. There wasn't a lot of communication that was directed at our community.
Yep.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so the morning update show was born.
Morning update.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
that one. I remember. Yeah. Talk about that, because I think what I love hearing about the early beginnings of things, because we see where you're at now and we know why you're at where you're at now. But what was it like to just be able to like be at the beginning of something, and maybe you don't know where it's going to end up because you just love where you're at the moment? Is that how it felt?
Yeah. It was like when you're doing something with such a purpose.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It you feel the purpose, and you're purpose led and you're purpose driven. I love this phrase of living in purpose on purpose. And someone said that to me, and I was like, oh, that's it,
Yeah.
But you know it when you feel it. Like I knew I wasn't in it when I was in advertising or some of the
Yeah.
other industry, right? And then getting in community, I was like, oh man, this is it, because it was resonating with the waters of my body in a different way.
Yeah.
And so the morning update show was, Omari and I were co-hosts, and it started off as a 2-hour-long show every day because everybody was shut in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was great for me because I'm coming from Federal Way, getting to Seattle in 20 minutes, 15, sometimes 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Because nobody was on the road.
Yeah. True.
And
Oh my
police weren't
God.
even on the road then. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I get to smash. Like,
Yo, there was no
it's good
traffic.
times,
Yeah.
But it really was such a beautiful time to bring resources out to community, to bring experts on to talk about COVID-19, what the virus was, because we didn't really know. And there wasn't anything that I think a lot of people were trusting in terms of major media at the time, right? And so it was really such a great time to be anchored in, we need to do this for our community.
Yeah.
So it was something, Omari always says, like, look, I told you, I could only guarantee 2 people will be watching. That's my mom and my dad, but we're going to produce this like millions are watching.
100%.
And that was that spirit of, we're going to do our absolute best in terms of the product that we're putting out.
Yep.
That is such a foundation
That's so
of
important.
Converge Media for sure.
Definitely.
That's so important, because it's like it's not yours after that. After you release it, it's not yours.
That's right.
Right? It's all that's yours is your intention, the effort you put into it, right? The vision and all the good stuff. And once you release it, you did your part,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. So I know we talked about like working behind the camera and stuff like that. So I guess in your eyes, what are some of the things that the average person might not know about like what it takes to really like produce a show or, start up a show?
Well, I go back to the vision.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have a really strong vision for what you want your end product to look like, you have to kind of use an agile method. My good friend told me about agile, and I'm like, that's so true. You have to start with the end in mind and peel it back from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how I move. Is I think about what do you want that end result to be, and for anyone who's looking to do kind of production work or work in a way that's producing content, you want to think like, okay, if we know what we want the end to be, then we can pull the steps back to get to that end result.
Yeah.
And that's important. And then, there in production, specifically like film or TV production, there's a bunch of things that just that day the technology just don't want to act right. You push the button, it doesn't want to do the thing, right? And so, when I was growing in media, when I was young, growing up, and they would say, acting is about coming to the set and being willing to wait. Acting is getting there and waiting, and you'd go through hair and makeup and costume design and all that. And then you get to the set and they're like, the lighting isn't right. We got to fix it. And I'd be on sets sometimes for, hours, waiting for the shot to be right. And that's something that is just not shown enough. I think now with the exploration of the internet and all of this, we see more of it now than we did when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But it was definitely something that I didn't know until I was experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
So I think those are a couple of different things that are really important for anybody who's looking to, get into producing content.
Yeah, and also let's also touch on The Day with Trey. I want to talk about that, which is your current show. Your host, producer, and you guys are going on what? Is it 3 years now?
Yeah, this
approaching
is
3 years.
Yeah, this is the third season, of it.
Okay.
So, and it's just been such an amazing time.
Yeah. So can you just talk to us about how what that show means to you, and then also what people can expect when they do tune in?
Yeah. So, I mean, I I skipped a part in my history because I actually graduated and I started working immediately at King 5.
Oh, okay.
And I was there for the news team. I was a part of the news team. And it was like I was running teleprompter. I was at the assignment desk. I'd go out to the field. I remember when we do May Day coverage, I had to go out for that. And I realized like the role that I loved the most then, because I had done, internships at Scan TV, which was like public access, and I ran like 3 shows, and I was just like, oh man, this is amazing. But I was doing robotic cameras from the studio. They had this robotic camera set up, and you could run 3 to 4 cameras with this robotic whole set system. But in that system, you got to create the graphics and lower thirds, which are like nameplates. I mean, all of the things that you would need for a live studio audience style show.
Yep.
And so I got to do all that, right? I got to do all the graphics. I got to do these shows. And that's called technical directing, right? In live TV, it's called technical directing. And when I got to King 5, I'm like, man, I'm gunning for it, right? I want to be the dopest technical director, because that's where you get to call the shots on what shot goes next, right? And you're doing it live, and there's such a thrill. So I was inspired by the folks who had live daytime talk shows, even then, because of the technical directing side. So, at King 5, I'm like, oh, the technical director has been there for decades. And he's not leaving until like more decades, right?
For sure.
And
so
the role wasn't opening for me anytime soon. And even when I was intentional, like I want to get a technical directing job, to get into the field was like almost impossible, because things were also changing with the growth of technology.
I feel like a lot of traditional media has been like that too.
Yeah.
Even radio is like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, I need to. Being on camera is not it, because the reporters have to be very specific. And I was like, I don't know, I want to be able to be my full-fledged self. So fast forward to the day with Trey, and that's why I bring up like Community Corner on Africatown Media Network. I also had chats with Trey, and we had I had my own little set. Kind of on the same set that we had the morning update show. I had a little corner, and that was my little set for chats with Trey, and I had my own jingle then. And then after the morning update show wrapped, Omari and I talked about, what does it look like for me to have my own show, and to really focus on some of the things that I was loving so much about the morning update show. Because Omari was kind of the news person, like, and I was kind of like community, right? I want to bring community folks on. So the day with Trey really is, the next level of kind of all of this work, right?
Yep.
And it's just a special place where I really get to be completely myself.
Yep.
I mean, I was on the morning update show, and that transferred over well. I was in all of these other shows prior to morning update. And Chats with Trey was synonymous kind of at around the same time as morning update. So all of these things allowed me to see how important it was for me to be myself.
Yep.
And I think specifically because guests really affirm that for you, right? When, I have guests come on and they're so inspired because they're like, my God, like you do this without a prompter, and all of I thought you were reading something the whole time I'm watching. I'm thinking, and I'm like, wow, how many people say that? So then people were like, you're like Seattle's Oprah. You're Seattle's Oprah.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my God, you're Seattle's Oprah. And I was like, wow, okay, well, I would have to get with Oprah one day so she can invest.
Oprah, if you're watching this, Oprah, come through.
There we go, right? But it's like, there's something to be said about, again, you can have the greatest intent, but how people receive it, the impact you're making is what is the affirmation. And so for me, the day with Trey, it's a place where, Monday through Friday. It's 5 episodes a week.
Mhm.
Y'all know what it
Yeah, we
what
were
it
there.
means to
Yeah.
We were
pull
there.
like a whole
Yeah.
episode together,
Yep.
even for your show. You know it's a lot.
Yeah,
of
Yeah.
work
we was
behind the
there.
scenes.
I respect it 100% because you know
100%.
we all come from it, so we
Yeah.
know. I'm like, it's just
Yeah.
it's amazing though. It's amazing to see where you're at, and I feel like you know my saying. I feel like everything's written. Everything's already been written, and I
Yeah.
think we just got to get to those pages. And so, it's amazing, and it's actually going to segue into this next topic that I wanted to bring up, and I think you can be the perfect person to speak to it, and that is the landscape when you're talking about media, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. Like, from your viewpoint, how have you seen the landscape of media and the work that's being done kind of shift the energy in the city and the region over the last 4 or 5 years? Because me personally, I've definitely seen a shift. If you brought up 2017, if you go back to 2017 to now, there's been a clear shift in frequency. But how have you seen it?
Well, it takes anchors to drive culture forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're seeing, particularly in community media, independent media, in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. But the idea that, you have to understand that back then, I think people weren't sure if what they wanted to share would be received
Yeah.
well. And I think now people are like, I don't even care, because whoever's listening is who's supposed to listen.
Yeah.
Whoever's watching is who's supposed to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 12 views and I'm going to keep on going.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think there's something to be said about dedication too, because we're also in this culture of microwave. I got to have it now, right? I need to do something right now that's going to get me to 1 million plus views.
Yeah.
And and that is where you lose the integrity of the product
Yeah.
that you're putting out. I think if you focus on the product, all of that stuff will come. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm experiencing,
Yeah.
is that you have some folks who you can see they were going after views,
Yeah.
right? Or they were, some of their sponsors maybe didn't always fit the alignment of what the people who were receiving the media or the content thought it should be.
Yeah.
And so it starts to shift a little bit.
Yep.
And then some people don't move with that shift.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's really important, and it's such a special time that we have access to the technology we do today,
Yep.
so that we can just do our own thing.
Yep.
We get to drive the narratives. We get to be the anchors of moving culture forward. We get to have spaces and places like the UpNUp where people can come and actually just have a real conversation with two brothers
Yep.
who, care about the culture that y'all are building here,
Yep.
and how it also fits into this larger culture.
Yep. Exactly.
Right? Which is so key right now.
Yeah.
And when you think about even 2017, even when I graduated college, like that didn't exist.
Yeah.
The idea
Yeah.
of the technology was kind of starting to get there.
Yeah.
But the ideas of, now we can go direct to consumer in a way that changes the game, because we don't need you to say yes
Yep.
to our proposal
That's
Yeah.
real.
to be on your platform.
Yep.
That's
We'll
real.
build our own platform,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And so it's something really special about what we're experiencing at this
Yep.
time.
And I think, man, I love that, because it's like nobody wants to be rebellious and be like, oh, I'm gonna go do my own thing. We initially set out to, hey, I like what you got going on. Can I be a part of it? And you realize, man, this doesn't fit. And I learned a lesson early on about you have to know what's not for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to go through those moments of feeling like, damn, all right, I can't make it happen here. Maybe they're not going to help me the way I thought they're going to help me. So I don't need to be here. So this isn't for me. And you making that decision will now steer you to figure out another way, right? So I'm just glad you touched on the independent aspect of it, because it's important,
Yeah.
being able to and it also puts the responsibility on you to have intention and integrity, right? Everybody wants
100%.
creative control, but that comes with a responsibility.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they know it's you.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
get to be like, oh, but are the people above us? It's
Yeah.
like, no, you
Yeah.
don't. Yeah,
Yep.
you don't get to dump it off on somebody else.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I did want to talk about a quote, me being a quote man,
Quote
that I
man,
read in the South Seattle Emerald, and you said, rewards come when you put a full amount of dedication into your craft.
Mm.
I know it's pretty self-explanatory when I read it, but if you want to touch on that and talk about that.
Well, I think we sometimes folks can have a tendency to be splintered in what they do, and I'm grateful. It never every day it never fails to amaze me that I am able to hone in on the craft of communications in different ways, right? Because with Converge, I get to be Trey and just be me and bring guests on, and I'm so grateful to have a platform that just elevates who I am. You know, Omari's never tried to like, oh, you need to change and be this way.
Yeah.
He's like, look, like, how do we amplify you, you know? And then, you know, for my day job, I'm a communications director with the state for the Office of Equity, which is a part of the governor's office. And that is because of the work I was doing in community, right? Because they saw me doing this work on my show, and they're like, we need your energy here. All right. But I get to be, again, the visionary, building my team, crafting communications projects that matter to the office, but also matter to me. And so this idea of like the dedication and focusing in, because if you're splintered and you have your energy everywhere, what you're producing is watered down. Right?
That's real.
And so there's something very special about being able to like plant your feet in the right place and allow that planting to be proliferated through your energy on multiple projects. But it's all really the same planting of the feet, right? It's like from the same soil, and it's moving in the same direction.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that because I feel like we could be valuable in multiple places.
Absolutely.
Right, but we do have to hone in on what is our value and what is the thing that we're trying to lead with in terms of like leveraging our value. You know what I mean? And
where do you want to go? I mean, I think for me, again, this is why, you know, I was telling an intern some years ago, giving my story about starting since I was 9. And they were like, whoa, I didn't realize. And I was like, yeah, I mean, this was a lot of polishing. This is a lot of, there's no way I could do my show without a prompter if I wasn't at the age of 9, like learning how to read a prompter. Right.
Exactly.
So there's so many layers and levels to it. And I think that, because there's another side though too, I think, to independent media, where it's like then everyone thinks they can do it, and they don't realize like, oh, if you get the technology, I got the tools, I got the mics, I got the this, I got the that. If you don't realize, like, it's not because you have access to the things that makes it real, right? There's really some magic behind that you got to be able to have internally in order for anything you're producing to matter to anyone.
It's vision, and intention. I mean, shout out to the microphone companies, man. They're making a ton of money right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like, cool. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. And you have to understand, like I talk about this all the time. I say whatever you're creating, you have to understand you're building identity as well. So anybody who wants to start a platform or a podcast, I always encourage it. I'm like, please do, because it's important. Everybody has a voice and everybody wants to lend their voice to something. Everybody has a cause that they want to speak to or thing that they want to contribute to. But I feel like when you're building something, you should also be mindful of the identity you're building, right? So it's not just the things that you're using to drive this vehicle or put it out there because you want to put it out there. It's an identity. And so if you're not mindful of that, and you don't have a vision and you don't have an identity behind what you're building, that's when it becomes the, you know, folks who may not have such a strong foundation with what they're doing. And there's no direction. So now it's kind of in the wind, you know, wherever the wind wants to take it, as opposed to understanding where you're trying to take it.
You'll accept almost anything. If you're not really, like, you'll get a sponsor and you'll be so happy about the sponsor that then you'll look up and you're like, oh my God, in 3 months, my whole platform has changed because like of this, you know, the vision that somebody else had. Again, because my vision wasn't strong enough. And I will say there's something to be said about those who study the craft. One of the things I really appreciate about Omari is he did it for years. All over the country, in different countries in Africa, all over the continent. I mean, he did it for years. And I think that when I think about me, it's like I did it for years. And so some people who are like, well, it takes me back to my Howard days where it was
Mhm.
like, I'm cute enough. I could just buy the equipment myself
Yeah.
and I can
Mhm.
just do, and I'm like, that's actually not it. So sometimes when people come to me, I really go through like a whole thing when they're like, I'm just trying to do what you do. I'm like,
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lineage of like
Yeah.
experiences that led up to this. You
And
know?
there's learning along the way
Yeah.
that you have to actually go through, because you got to be able to be like, oh, yeah, when I touch that, that's hot.
Mhm.
Okay, right? Like, I'm not going to touch that because it's going to
Yeah.
burn my finger.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that because you're just trying to learn from the experiences of other people,
Mhm.
then you won't be able to plant your feet like I was talking about. You won't have that vision
Yeah.
like you're talking about,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
won't really be able to be anchored in what you're producing at all.
Yes.
And so I encourage folks to really study, because when you study, you start to understand more. And yeah, some of that is studying by doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's early phases and
Yeah.
it builds upon itself.
Yeah, I think also one thing that I'm realizing in this age of like massive content, excessive content, I feel like with content, you got to also think connectivity,
Yeah.
right? And not just virtually, but in real life. And so back to kind of what you were talking about all of the people you get to sit down with and connect with. These are real people in the real world who are making real moves and have, you know what I mean, like real impact happening. So I think for those out there who want to start something of their own, nowadays the barrier to entry to everything seems very low.
Yeah.
It seems non-existent. So that should let you know something, that there has to be more than just doing the thing and getting in and doing the thing. Like, you got to find a way to connect it to the real world in some way.
Yeah.
Anything you do,
Mhm.
just find a way to connect it to the real world.
I love that thing about connectivity. I think you're 100% right on
Yeah.
that, because that is what resonates with an audience.
Mhm.
That's what
Yeah.
lands for people, right? Like,
Mhm.
if it's disjointed, they feel that too, and they're like, I'm good on that. Like,
Mhm.
I don't need to, And I was just talking to my brother about this. Like, there's some platforms that utilize drama as their driving force because they
Mhm.
know, like, okay, if I produce kind of some trashy stuff, like,
Yeah.
there's some people who just need that trashy stuff
mess.
in their day,
Yeah.
or think they need it, right?
Yeah.
Or like, right? I mean, and so there again, but that starts with a vision too. Like, you got to be able to accept what comes with that
Yep.
Yeah.
when you're doing it that way. And so I
100%.
think, you're 100% right. The connectivity,
Mhm.
that's what people experience on the other end.
Yeah, because you get a chance when you think like that, you also understand that, man, you see the real power in the platform
Mhm.
based on
You
the
do.
connections you're able to make.
You
For
do.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I also wanted to ask, like, we touched on the technical stuff as well, but and I know you were talking about it. It got to come from within us. So I guess, like, for example, when we were starting the UpNUp, me and Robbie had to be very patient. Like, it took us like 2 years to map out the whole thing. So I guess, what are some of those qualities that someone would also need to kind of, like, as a creator, just from a creator standpoint?
Well, I think about some of the greats in creativity who are like, you just don't stop, right?
Yeah.
There's a consistency that you have to have, because you got to know, like, first off, like, for me, there's something that's a driving force for me, because I look at daytime talk shows, and that's what I was getting to when I was talking about The Day with Trey.
Mhm.
It's 5 episodes every week. It's Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. It's structured just like a daytime talk show,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when I look at daytime talk shows, I'm
Yeah.
like, I understand that what I'm bringing is not actually happening
Mhm.
in the world of daytime talk shows.
Mhm.
And so studying the niche that you're
Yeah.
in,
Yep.
I think is so important
Yep.
there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
that's some of the things that help you understand and identify, am I even doing something that's relevant
Yep.
Mhm.
or that's different enough?
Yep.
Or do I think it's just my personality that's going to sell this thing,
That's right.
right?
Mhm.
And that's going to make sure people connect to it.
Yeah.
So I think that you really have to understand the industry and then that niche you're in, because that's the kind of stuff right there that allows for you to have the level of dedication that you
Right.
need. You think about any great rapper who's like, man, I started off and I was, I had a show and there was 3 people in the audience,
Mhm.
but it didn't stop them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or I had to sell, my stuff out the trunk.
Yep.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Before people got on to, like, my t-shirts are fly and
Yeah.
now they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think about origin stories a lot. And
Yeah.
that's a drive. I mean, it should be a driver for anyone who wants to do anything with their life that's major
Yeah.
and that's going to impact people outside of like their circle of influence, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have something that is driving you on the days when you're depleted.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Your energy is done, but
Yeah.
you still got to make it happen
Yeah.
because you're committed.
Yep.
You know, so that level of commitment and that dedication, I
Yeah.
think that's really what sets the best from the rest.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You got to know what you're trying to connect to.
Yeah.
You know, and that's amazing. So Trey, man, you've been dropping some gems. Effortlessly.
Man.
Y'all are really
That's
like
fun.
good people to talk to.
Come on,
This is
come
good
on.
stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't
Appreciate
get to
that.
be on this side often, so this is
Hey.
great.
You know what I'm saying? You interviewed us. We're like, we got to interview you.
Yeah.
man.
Right on.
The interviewers need to be interviewed, guys. All right. Now, before we kind of wrap things up, I do always ask guests this question. I'm curious for you. You work hard. We know that, but how do you kind of keep a balance between the work and life and just kind of like, I mean, you touched on it earlier in the show about how now you're in a season of trying to really give yourself what you need. But what has worked for you up until this point?
That's such a great question because, you know, family is always kind of that anchor. But for me, in the last several years, 5-6 years or something, it's really been about spiritual development, you know, getting back to kind of the traditions and the cultures of, you know, like our ancient ancestors. Because I grew up Christian, and there was a time where I was like, I'm not sure if like what I'm seeing in my Christian world is hitting me hard enough. And so I kind of explored, you know, deeper levels of Christianity and kind of on my own as a young like teenager. You know, I was not even in my 20s yet, and that took me on a journey. And then, you know, as I started to learn more about some of the customs and the practices of like our ancient ancestors, like comedic science started to really shine a light in my life, you know, and it has been such a game changer for me. You know what I mean? In the way that I understand my own power. It goes back to the quote of the day, how I understand my own power and the things that I get to choose, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty for me is that this is work for myself because I now have a firmer understanding of me being able to choose any emotion I desire to manifest at any time, right? Like I don't have to be angry and depressed and frustrated and whatever else. Like I don't have to be.
Yeah.
I get to choose to be at peace in the midst of any and all challenges in my life. And there was a couple of things that really helped me like pour into me in that way to keep me balanced. And one of them was I get to remove the word kind of challenges. I'll say it because that's how people understand it. But to flip it and be like, these are opportunities. Every challenge in our life is an opportunity for us to actually grow, you know, and especially to grow spiritually.
Yeah.
Because when we are connecting with the divine within us, when we realize like we're divine beings, there's something so like it's the most freeing thing and it's so powerful. And so in that practice, there's, you know, meditation, we do Qigong, I, you know, practice breathing techniques and all of these things that now my sons get to see a different mom, right? Because when I was like out there, y'all, you know what I mean? It was, you know, it was different. You had a different way of dealing with life's opportunities, right? And so, and sometimes those ways are destructive and you don't know it until you kind of get away from it for some time and you get to like, oh man, I get to anchor myself in something that is ancient practice, you know? And last year I went to Egypt, right? And it was such a pilgrimage, you know? And honestly, when you're there and you're experiencing like the brilliance of the Kemetic people before it was called Egypt, it was Kemet, right? And so the pyramids and all of the things that are in stone and the ways that almost every major religion practically every major religion derives from all of that work. It's been the most freeing thing. So I go to my spiritual development when you ask me about like, how am I balancing myself? Because there's no way probably that just me doing the things that I was doing before, I would have had the energy to do what I'm doing today. And so I'm so grateful for that spiritual balance. You know what I mean?
I love that.
It's just essential for me.
That's
in
a
my
word
life.
right there.
Yes.
That's a word.
That's amazing.
That's a word. I also love how you talked about the power of the word choices, right? The words we choose, challenges, opportunities. I actually recently, well, not recently, but for a while, the word pressure, I've been replacing that with purpose.
Nice.
If it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like if instead of saying I'm under pressure, I say I'm under purpose, right?
Beautiful.
And I think it's just the connotations we're removing from the words.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same feeling.
We don't have to accept whatever the thing is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are like, what do you mean? Because I'm like, oh, stress. My coworkers are, oh my God, I don't want to stress you out. I'm like, girl, stress is a choice.
Yeah.
I don't choose it ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why are you choosing it? You know? Right? Like, we have to get this project done by deadline. Okay. That means that we have to crank things out. We have to do some extra hours. We have to, I have to get into my creative bag in order to pull it out. But that's not stressful.
Yeah.
It's because I put that title on it. Now it becomes something else. But if I choose to not say that, if I'm like, oh, that's not what that is, like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to explore my creativity.
Yeah,
I mean, it just is a shift in mindset. But it's so easy to do, but most people don't do this.
Yeah, I think it's because, like, I don't know, for me personally, it's a matter of I kind of embrace the feeling because I feel like the words represent the same feeling sometimes, right? Like being excited and being anxious kind of feel the same a little bit. But how you describe the feeling is what makes the difference, right?
Yeah.
So pressure and purpose feel the same, but how you describe it, will determine your ability to embrace the feeling and be at peace with it. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a word.
important.
That's a word.
No, you're right. I just read this book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and it talks
I
about
got
that.
it.
Yeah. So it talks about how like you receive those like moments and like your emotions, your emotions. Pretty much like you can't stop that, but after that you have a choice to see how you're gonna respond to it. Pretty much. So.
Well, you have a choice even in that.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Like, I mean, one of the things that has really changed my life was me visualizing me responding differently. Like, there's a trigger scenario, and I take that scenario into meditation, and I have a very different visualization that I attach to whatever that thing is. So if something would come into my world and it would, in the past, it would trigger me to respond negatively with my emotion.
Right.
I get to then just like respond in peace. So there's this thing of moving from peace to pleasure and pleasure to peace always. And that's really what we're supposed to do here in these vessels, right?
Yeah.
Get to a point where we can move between those things, because really anytime I don't have what I think I should, or what, the thing is disappointing or something like that, let me be at peace. And when I have all of these great things, that I get to experience that joy and that pleasure, but I get to always choose peace, right? And that's I think for me a big game changer, because we in these vessels, Western society kind of teaches us like, but you are your emotion, go dive into that emotion. And it's like, actually, that emotion is giving me more cortisol in my body. It's flooding my, you know what I mean? It's making me have bad, blood pressure and all these things. Like, it's negatively impacting me to dive into that. So let me choose not to dive into that, and let me work on my cultivated responses so that when I'm choosing, I'm intentional about what I'm choosing, right? Which is so key. So you're right. I mean, everything, all of that is really is about choice.
I love it. We got to be more observant with our emotions.
We got to respond, not react. That's
There
how I've been
it
kind of,
It's so true, right? And because it makes you more intentional about what you're putting out there with someone else, and how your response impacts whatever that relationship is, whatever that situation, that moment is. You have the power to do that.
Yeah.
So that's really my long way of it.
Yeah, nah,
you
man, we
know,
gonna get
how
there.
I deal with,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
balance, because you can't, I think for any high performing person, anybody who puts out a lot or has a high output in their lives, you almost can't, can't do that without doing some type of self-reflection and some type of balancing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because people talk about burnout, and I'm grateful. I've never really experienced like, oh my God, I'm just burnt out. I can, right? I get to a point where I'm like, all right, I need to just kind of chill,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But I'm chilling so that I can get ready for the next leg of the race.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Strategic.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Wow.
Man, Trey, we appreciate you so much for being here, sharing time with us.
Yeah.
But before we do get you out of here, we ask every guest this question. Oh, do you got?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
yeah,
I
yeah.
just go first? My
Yeah.
bad. Where can everybody find you if they want to contact you and
yes.
watch your show?
Absolutely. You can
Yeah.
find the show at whereweconverge.com. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up Converge Media and The Day with Trae. That's TRAE. You can find it there. Everything is congregated on our website. Blog posts. We have a lot of different amazing content. You can also follow me on Instagram at TraeAnna Holiday. You can follow Converge Media at www.converge on Instagram. It's a major platform, but of course you can look up Converge Media on LinkedIn, on X, on Facebook. You can find TraeAnna Holiday on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So
And Google.
Yeah.
Google her.
Yeah.
It's so
funny.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Y'all better
Thanks for
tap
asking
in.
because I've been forgetting to plug it. Thank you.
Yeah. Everybody, make sure you tap in, man. Now, if you can, what's one word to describe what keeps you on the up and up and why?
Ooh. I think it's a word that you started the show off with, and that is grateful. Whether it's gratitude or grateful, you have it right there.
Yeah, I was looking right at it.
I saw it as soon because
I almost forgot about me stickers.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because I think you have to move through the world understanding how things aren't in alignment. God, you said things are written, right? Like this kind of destiny thing.
Yeah.
How things are in alignment for you to learn and grow and be who you're meant to be. And I'm eternally grateful. For all of the opportunities that have gotten me to where I am today. So my word is grateful. It does keep me on the up and up because it also keeps me looking, up. Where I'm just grateful.
Double entendre right there.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
like that's important. So
That's real.
Yeah, gratitude.
That's
for
real.
sure.
That's real.
Nice.
Man, I'm grateful.
Man, me too.
Grateful for this episode, 100%.
Definitely.
But Trey, we wish you much success moving forward with everything you got going on. We thank you for being here. You always got support with us here at the Up and Up always as well.
Always.
Thank y'all so much. This was so helpful. And,
Yes.
and I want to say to y'all, if y'all know of dope folks doing dope things, let me know. Let's get them on the Day with Trae too.
Let's get them.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get 'em.
Any of y'all out there listening, I always tell folks, look, I'm inspired by the things that I do, and I'm always trying to make sure that others can be inspired to see themselves as a part of the solution. So if there is somebody in the community or in your neighborhood or in your world that is doing that work, that is being a part of the solution, and you want to help elevate and amplify them, hit us up. The Day with Trae at whereweconverge.com.
Y'all heard it. Y'all
You know
heard
it.
it. Don't be shy.
There we go.
You want to tell your
There we
story, you know where to go.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah,
Oh,
but thank you for
definitely.
being
Thank
here.
you.
Wish you much
Thank you.
success. And with that being said, I think it's safe to say TraeAnna Holiday is officially a member of the Up and Up.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap.
To continue supporting the podcast and the entire Up and Up movement, be sure to rate, review, like, and subscribe.
As well as follow us at _ the Up and Up on all social media platforms to stay connected with everything the Up and Up has coming your way.
Thanks for listening, and until the next one.
Keep it on the Up and Up.